Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk about One Piece, uh, video games, which is different. Now, in my video about DBZ Kakarot, I mentioned how Dragon Ball really is a show or story about characters with epic fights and the hype for those fights, right? Like, the fights may only take up 10% of the screen time, but there's a ton of time spent, training, talking about how powerful the enemy is, building up to the fight, right? And so really, if you want to build a Dragon Ball game, there are two core fantasies you can fulfill. You can perfectly show off the combat elements of the story, or you can make players feel as hype for their own actions as they do for the actions that happen in the story, right? So, you can either do a fighting game or you can do an RPG where the player gets to feel like their character is as powerful and badass and doing cool stuff as anyone in the main story. And anything you try to do besides that is just going to be like a kind of weird palette swap on an otherwise not related game, and One Piece has kind of a similar issue where the story is really mostly about characters and partially about the world. And the only way you could really do justice to what One Piece is about is to, one, have a game that perfectly follows the story of the manga, or two, have an open world game where, you just plop a character into the world of One Piece. So far as I know, this hasn't been done, really. I've played a couple of One Piece games, but not many, and none of them were good, so... I just played World Seekers for about an hour and a half before deciding I didn't really think there was anything interesting about it and requesting a refund. Yeah. There's... Okay, so with One Piece, like I said, it is a battle shonen. There are battles, but the battles aren't the core focus of the story, right? The battles are there as a visual expression of character growth and, narrative stakes, right? Like, the battle with CP9 didn't matter as a fight. What mattered was the fact that, these characters were putting themselves on the line and risking everything for their friend, and the fact that, Robin finally felt like she had a family and all, it was about the character moments. Sorry, spoilers. I mean, it's hard to think of Enies Lobby as having, like, spoilers because it happened, well, like 15 years ago in real time, and it's so many arcs ago in the story. I mean, it is one of the bigger arcs, but I feel like realistically you're not spoiling anything until you get to the, well, Impel Down, basically. Because that's the point where, like, you start to see some important, like, we didn't see this coming moments. I mean, I guess Water 7 had some of those moments with, like, the ship and everything, but mostly I think if you can kind of sort of expect, oh, there's going to be a rescue arc, because it's anime, then it's not really a spoiler to say that there was a rescue arc, but yeah, sorry. Anyway, so, with One Piece, yeah, there's lots of fighting, and there's lots of really cool fighting moves that characters can use. But but it's not about the fighting. And yes, you can put Luffy or Zoro or whoever into a fighting game and have them work just fine, but that kind of breaks down the further you go into it. Like, how would you put Usopp into Street Fighter? He's all ranged. You can't do that. It's completely unfair, right? Um, or Nami. Like, she doesn't have any direct attacks. She just controls the weather. And also, the fights in One Piece are seldom about hitting each other with your most powerful attacks. I mean, most of Luffy's fights are about that, but everyone else gets to do some other things, chasing people around the environment, hiding, ducking from cover, switching opponents, using mirages, digging underground. I mean, they do all kinds of things. They use a lot of advanced tactics, interact with the environment a lot, and it's just kind of crazy and silly to think that you could translate all of that into a fighting game, like with DBZ it's pretty easy, you know because the fights are very straightforward. 90% of the time they're 1v1, and they just happen in a blank environment, or they're flying above everything, so they don't have to worry about obstacles anyway, you know so it makes sense to translate that into a traditional 2D or 3D fighter. But with One Piece, not so much. And so with One Piece, what you can really do is, like I said, there are two options to make a good One Piece game, in my opinion. You can follow the story exactly, or you can build an open world. Let's talk first about following the story. Now, there are a couple of challenges involved here. First of all, the One Piece story is fucking massive and stretches across a huge variety of environments with a ton of characters and an absolute just crapload of stuff. And I think realistically, if you wanted to make a One Piece game that fully covered the story, you'd probably have to split it up. You'd probably have to have the first game go up until the time skip, and the second game picks up after that. There's a couple reasons for that. One, the characters completely change their appearance, which means if you're using, 3D models or something, you're going to have to redo those. And two, characters gain access to things like hockey, and what, new transformations and better weapons and all kinds of stuff post time skip, which are like pretty dramatic shifts in terms of gameplay, probably. Like the game isn't about fighting, but you would need to have a system of combat in the game, or else there would be no gameplay. And if you have a system of combat in the game, then it would be really weird to have no hockey for a huge period of time, and then suddenly, boom, now you have this thing. Where do we even fit it on our button map if we already had a button map that didn't include this, So clearly that would have to be incorporated, in a separate environment, because it would take so much more work. And I think in general a game like that would take a lot of work because, well, for a couple of reasons. So one, you would need to have playable character models for each member of the Straw Hat crew, because basically if a game were going to follow the story, you'd be like, half cutscenes and half going through each character's fight in turn. And then maybe like maybe a little bit of time could be spent on like, exploring your ship or running around some small environment that surrounds your fights or whatever. But realistically, if you're going to make such a huge story with so many areas, you don't want to build a ton of map to encompass those areas, because that increases the work dramatically, and you're already spending a lot of time on cutscenes and multiple playable characters and everything. So, yeah, that. But I mean, it kind of goes on, like there's just so many levels to it. Um, Telling the story on its own is a big production, and adding like meaningful gameplay around that would be difficult. Realistically, probably the only gameplay you would be able to get is some, form of fighting, which, if you do a good job with it, could be worthwhile. Like if you actually build little arenas that have interesting things to interact with in them, and you actually, build a combo list that lets all the characters do all of their unique moves, then you could make it work. But that's a lot of effort to put in on top of telling the story and on top of, rendering all of these huge environments for, so it'd be difficult and big and not very easy. And like I said, you'd probably have to split it into two sections or two different games. Which, I mean, if you started making the first game right now, let's say it'd be done in 2 years, and then, you start work on the next game, say a year after that, maybe the story would be done or close to it, and you could actually, fill that out, but also maybe not. Maybe the story wouldn't be done, and you'd have to make a third one just to finish off the end game stuff. So that's a pain in the ass. And the other thing you could do is you could make an open world. Oda has built a very well crafted world, a very, like, you know exactly what's where and what kind of places you can get to and things like that. So what they could do is they could build, islands and environments and stuff, and just plop down a bunch of random shit, random enemies, random whatever. Um, the more crazy shit your character does, the higher your bounty goes, and the more Marines chase after you, etc. Um, and you basically just explore the world of One Piece, but probably not as the Straw Hat crew, right? Because the Straw Hats are like, existing characters with an existing story. You can't just do whatever with them. So you'd probably have to have the player, create their own character and shit. And yeah, that'd be a little weird. It would also be hard to give the player the ability to do whatever they want with their character creation, right? Like, let's say your character can eat a devil fruit and have a special power. Well, one, there's a lot of different devil fruits, and I don't think any developer would really want to build in all of those different special powers as playable things. But two, which fruits are available, right? Because, like, when in the story does this game happen? Does this happen before our main adventure? Does it happen after? you know. I mean, if you made the game focus around, say, Roger, you know, then you could have it all happen before, and you could have, you know, you'd have a lot more freedom with which fruits are out there, you know. Because I mean, when Roger starts his journey, or you know, some random person on Roger's crew, right? Let's pretend that. Um, that could be really interesting and give you the opportunity to see, you know, like some interesting parts of the story that you wouldn't otherwise get to see, you know. But it would still probably create issues story wise. Realistically, if you wanted to do the open world approach, you'd probably just have to set it, you know, in the middle of the Straw Hat story and just kind of ignore the Straw Hats most of the time and focus on like other aspects of the world. Or maybe just in that gap, like, you know, there was a lot of time between when Roger died and when Luffy started his journey, so you can set it during that time frame and just be like, you're one of the pirates setting out on the Great Pirate Era right at the beginning before, you know, the Marines get their shit together and really crack down on you. And that might work, but yeah, in general, I think that kind of game would also take a lot of work because you'd have to build explorable areas for every island, right? And you'd have to have the ability to sail around the game, you know, in your ship. And most likely, the only way you could make that happen is you build like one specific area, like say the East Blue or the first half of the Grand Line as your initial playable area, and then you start adding DLC for all of the other parts of the world that players might want to go to. I mean, obviously going through the Grand Line is the biggest thing, but you know, like even that is a lot. You know, for example, at the very beginning, they mentioned there's seven different paths through the Grand Line, and you know, you can take a bunch of different routes. And it's also pretty clear that our heroes kind of crisscross through the routes. Like, you know, they use a log pose to get directly to Alabasta, and then they use another one to get to where was it? No, they don't use another pose until they get past the red line. That's right. Okay. But there were 7 other paths with tons of other islands on them. And so, you know, if our heroes go through, like 10 islands? Let's see, we go... So stop at the red line, then they go to Whiskey Peak, then they go to Little Garden, then Alabasta, Drum Island along the way to Alabasta. That's 5. Then after Alabasta, they hit up Jaya and Skypiea right above it, and and then from there, they run into the Long Island, Water 7. There's a little island on the way to Water 7 that I don't know if it has a name or not, where they meet Aokiji. And then Thriller Bark, which isn't really an island, but it kind of is. and it's definitely the kind of place that players would want to be able to go to. Then, man, it just keeps going. So then there's Sabaody, right? Right after Thriller Bark, they go to Sabaody. Yeah. And then Amazon Lily also, which I think is still in the Grand Line. Not sure. Oh, Ennie's Lobby and the Marineford and the Prison Island and the, like there's like 15 islands right there just for the areas our heroes went to. And when you count all the areas they didn't go to, it's probably like, 50 or 60 islands. Maybe more than that. And I mean, if you want to just take 7 times 15, that's more than 100, So I just, that might be insane or impossible to pull off in an open world setting, to build that many islands with interesting stuff on them. And then, of course, on top of that, there'd have to be probably some ability to explore the blue areas, the East Blue, the North Blue, the South Blue, etc. There'd probably need to be, some ability to explore the second half of the Grand Line, and so it would take a lot of work if you wanted it to be, big, as big as it should be, right? And so realistically, what they'd probably do is start with just the islands we already know and maybe one or two others. And then use DLC to build, expansion packs that add in all of the other areas that you're supposed to be able to visit. And that could work, but nah. The biggest thing about a One Piece game is that the world is filled with so many interesting creatures and abilities and things. So it would be really cool to be able to, be a 3-4-armed guy who has, the flame fruit and because there's all kinds of things like that. Yeah, I mean, there are certain things that you probably shouldn't be able to do, shouldn't be an actual giant or whatever those things are that are way bigger than the giants, but yeah. It might also be cool to play as a Marine and see that area from the inside instead of just treating the Marines as bad guys all the time. Because, I mean, the show and the manga do sometimes explore the fact that to normal people, Marines are the good guys. They keep order and protect people from, violent criminal pirates. So it might be interesting to explore that if we're not playing as the Straw Hats. Also, we never really get to see what life is like on the Red Line for, for most people. I'm pretty sure that Luffy's initial village, where he meets the mountain bandits and everything, is on the Red Line. And I think so is Logtown, a couple others that we see in the early part of the East Blue. But I just think it would be cool if, if people were able to, you know, explore that part of the world that we've never really seen before, uh, because the story of One Piece focuses on pirates and adventure on the Grand Line, but the existence of mountain bandits proves that there is like society on the Red Line and people who prey on that society the same way pirates do. And, there might be some cool adventures to be had there. Um, of course, that's the kind of thing that Oda doesn't have time to explore because he's busy with the Straw Hats, but, in a video game, you don't have to be canon, so you can explore some shit like that. I don't know, maybe that wouldn't be the thing that interests people. Because the truth is that people love One Piece because of the characters, so if you don't get to play as the characters or alongside those characters, what even is the point? Um, which kind of sucks because, then you're pigeonholed into the retelling the story of the anime, which is, eh, you know? Or you have a story that isn't in the anime and it's just weird and nonsensical. Like, the story of World Seekers is just garbage. Like, it opens up with, like, the game opens up with a pre-menu cinematic of Luffy fighting some robot dude who looks like way stronger and way weirder than any enemy we've seen in One Piece so far. Like he flies and he has robot hands that punch out, and it's just like, this thing doesn't look like the other kinds of robots we've seen before. Like, this thing looks like it would kick a pacifista's ass 10 times over. And that shouldn't be the case. And then you get into the story, and it opens up with, you start the game, and it opens up with a story cutscene of them pulling an elaborate, heist in a sky prison, which, okay, hang on. Alright, I accept that there can be other prisons in One Piece besides Impel Down, but a sky prison? Like, what? There's no flying shit in One Piece. I mean, like, I guess in Witheria there's some, like, indication of things being able to fly, but that's implied as because they control weather. And obviously there's flying shit in Skypiea because it's in the sky. But outside of that, no. Like, we never see any flying ships or flying, anything except birds. Like, to go from, sails powered ships to we've got an island that floats in the sky and has, is under the control of the world government and run by Cyborgtron, is just, what? Also, the story takes place sometime post-time skip, but I'm not sure exactly when. We meet up with Smoker and he mentions Punk Hazard, so I guess it's past Punk Hazard, but beyond that, I don't know. But we're just like in the middle of this heist in a place we've never heard of for reasons that are unknown to us. I mean, if it's post-Punk Hazard, then how are they taking a detour? Right, like, if it's before Punk Hazard, they might have room for a detour because, but after Punk Hazard, they've made their alliance with Law and they're going out to fight, on Dressrosa and everything, and like there's no slowing down after Dressrosa, right? Like we go directly from Dressrosa to Zhao, and also kind of at the same time Whole Cake Island and Wano, and then like that's where the story is right now. There's no room for a detour. This is the most rapid fire part of the story, you know. So it's weird. It's weird on several levels that this cyborg thing exists and is more powerful than any cyborg thing we've ever seen. It's weird that, you know, they're just detouring up to do a prison break for no apparent reason. I don't think we even see Frankie during the intro cinematic, so I have no idea what he's doing. It's all over the place, really. There's some cool things about the game. Like like at one point we get to see the Thousand Sunny, and it's just like this huge fucking ship. Like this ship looks like it could hold 1,000 people. And I'm like, man, this looks so cool. I so want to go exploring the insides of the Thousand Sunny. Please, please, please. And you can't. You can interact with one door that lets you change clothes, and that's it. Yay. Ugh, fucking. You know. But my point with mentioning World Seekers is just that the story is nonsense. You know, it has nothing to do with One Piece. It has nothing to do with anything. And it's just an excuse for you to, you know, dick around in this completely unique area that really doesn't even look like it fits into the world of One Piece. It looks like, you know, some maps of like modern Japanese cities that got shunted down to the tech level of One Piece, kind of, sort of. You know, like there's all these like skyscrapers. Like, you know, the second city you go to is like a proper city, and it's got like legit just skyscrapers and boardwalks, and like it's set up like a modern city. Like I got to this one place where it's just like two skyscrapers connected by a bridge, and hanging from the bridge is just like this gigantic lettering, and I'm just like, this building definitely was modeled after something in the real world and not something from One Piece, and I hate it. And basically everything in that city makes me think that, and it's just ugh. So yeah, and in general I just don't think there's anything interesting about it. So yeah, that's my opinion on what you know, Bandai should do if they want to make successful One Piece games. You need to appeal to the core fantasy of the audience, right? You need to either let us experience the story in a fresh new way that is like better than the anime, right? That's the thing. It has to be better than the anime, or else why would we bother? Or you have to let us, you know, explore the world as our own, you know, characters, or even just as the Straw Hats, if you want to limit us that way, like exploring the world as Luffy or Zoro or whatever would be cool, but there needs to be like interesting things to do as you explore, you know. One thing World Seekers does pretty well is it lets, well, they have to do it well. So you play as Luffy, and you get to run around the environment, and Luffy can use his arms to stretch out and, like, you know, grapple hook onto things, which is cool, but but they just stop there. Like, he launches himself to a thing and then just comes to a dead stop. And I just thought, like, couldn't you have it set up so that we can, like, you know, launch past things at high speed like he does with the rocket on a regular basis? Or, use our arms to swing around like Spooderman? Because, I mean, like just let us move a little bit more fluidly through the environment. You've already made these environments stupid huge for no reason, so just like, your movement speed is shit. Like, there's an upgrade you can get to your movement speed right at the beginning, and so I got that one as quickly as I could, and then I still didn't feel like I was moving very quickly. I don't even know if it was a meaningful upgrade at all. So that really sucks. But, just like in general, there need to be interesting things to do in the world, things that the player would care about doing, right? Like, fetch quests, not interesting. We don't care. Go to the place, talk to the person, not interesting. Don't care. Fight 10,000 random mook soldiers that take 10 hits for no apparent reason, even though they shouldn't even be able to look at you without dying. Infuriatingly boring. Please stop. Don't care. Like, seriously, if a random Marine sees Monkey D. Luffy and walks up and tries to hit him, that Marine should explode from thinking that, because there is no chance in hell. And the fact that you need to actually go through and individually fight those enemies, and hit them one after, like, just stop. Just stop. And when you do have combat, it needs to be interesting. You can't just be like, mash X because it's your only attack button, and the end. Like, come on. Especially in One Piece, there's so many interesting techniques. Luffy alone has, like, an entire array of attacks for his arms and an entire separate array of attacks for his legs that are all named. He has a headbutt ability. He has so many different things and so many different ways to stack those things. The idea of just having one button, it's infuriating. Like, I'm not saying every attack should have its own button, because there's too many for that, but there are some ways you can do it. For one, you could make it so that you have a light and strong attack for both your arms and legs, right? So your light attack is the pistol, and your strong attack is the bazooka, and then your other light attack is the whip, and your strong attack is the hammer, right? And then you can build on those. So, like, you could have transformations, right? And so you turn on hockey, and then it changes all those to the jet version, and then you turn on or something like that. I suppose no, it would be Gear 2 activates the jet versions, and then Gear 3 activates the giant version. Gear 3 or 4, really. And then you can just turn on hockey to do the flaming version or whatever. And then you can build on that, and, like, if you press the pistol attack like 6 times in a row, then you do a Gatling or whatever. Like, it would be easy to build on that moveset and make some interesting things happen with, sure, it would take up 4 buttons, but, if combat is like 90% of what you do in the game, you can dedicate your 4 face buttons to it, or your 4 shoulder buttons or whatever. Um, so yeah, just and I mean, if you did want to do the open world option, you'd have to really explore the world, right? You know, make all of the different races that you can have. You know, there's the three-armed guys, and the absurdly tall people, and the, you know, there's so many things. You know, there's apparently a race of people that comes with like a third eye in the middle. Not sure if that would change anything. Um, you know, all kinds of things like that. And I mean, they can just be aesthetic differences, but they need to be there. And then you need to be able to pick your powers, right? Like, are you gonna be swordsman? Are you gonna fight with, you know, ranged weapons? Are you gonna fight, you know, with your hands? Do you have a devil fruit? Do you know hockey? Like, there's a bunch of different ways to augment the combat in One Piece, and you know, um, so yeah, that basically, and all of that would have to be realizable, and you'd have to have different kinds of combos and things. Um, you know, but yeah, I think it could be done. I think you could make a compelling game that uses the One Piece world or the One Piece characters or both. But I don't think I've seen any so far that do. Like I said, I've played a couple. There's one, I think, for the GameCube that's like, eh. I mean, you just kind of. I mean, it follows the story, I guess, but in a way that's really boring. Um, I haven't played that many of them. I've played more Dragon Ball games, and they're also pretty consistently not that good, um, either as video games or as appeals to the core fantasy of Dragon Ball. Um, so I know, like, we know Bandai can make good games because they have, you know, it's Bandai, but they just as frequently pump out like whatever random crap they think they can get away with, and I don't like that. Um, so yeah, I wish that One Piece had good video games that I was excited to play instead of a bunch of generic crap on the Steam store that I'm just like, would I even enjoy that if I picked it up? And then I pick it up and I try it and I'm like, yeah, not really. Not really. So, so yeah, that's my take on One Piece video games. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Okay, end card time. I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, subscribe, you know, all that stupid YouTube shit. There's a bell thingy, whatever. I have all the social media stuff: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Mostly I use Facebook and Twitter to tell you about my Twitch and YouTube uploads. I've got a Patreon, but you know, Patreon is one of those things where people who can afford to throw away money give money to people who can't. Um, and so if you can't afford to throw away money, then you shouldn't be doing that. And if you can afford to throw away money, consider charities. There's a pandemic, there's global warming, there's millions of people in the world who don't have toilets, which is just awful. So I've linked a few charities in the description down below in case you're interested in that. And if you can't donate money to a charity, consider donating some of your time, because that's also very useful. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.